welcome to the show. Today we have sort of a special edition of the show. We're going to talk about the recent events in Montgomery County and beyond, the flooding that happened particularly in Fort Plain of Montgomery County, the recent floods, the damage. I had a chance to go out there and visit with the local officials, talk with some of the residents that were affected, had homes damaged. We talked with Montgomery County Emergency Management, met with them. We had a chance to get an update on the situation, visited out there during the emergency, talked to some of the families. And one of the things that, that I always see when there's a disaster like this in the area is that Red Cross is on the scene. And they're on the scene fairly quickly. Which brings us to the topic of today's show. We have joining us with us here Mr. Gary Striar from the American Red Cross of Northeastern New York, the CEO. Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show here, given the recent events. And we wanted to talk to you about the response. From what I understand, Red Cross was on the scene, on the ground in Fort Plain, within a matter of hours.
Correct.
Tell us the events that transpired once the flooding happened, once the damage occurred. How does Red Cross take it from there? What happens?
We were contacted by the Montgomery County Emergency Management officials, and they let us know that they needed us to come and open a shelter. We knew that there were a lot of people who were out of their homes, who could not get back in, and we needed to make sure we had a safe, secure place for people to go. So we opened a shelter at the elementary school at the top of the hill, and which was a great place because it was an area that was not going to be flooded. And people could come in, and they had a cot, there were showers there, it was air conditioned, we fed them meals, we had mental health people there and our volunteers there to provide them support. There was a kitchen right at the shelter, which worked out beautifully. So that was our first priority, to make sure that we had a safe, secure, comfortable place for people to go that night.
And I had a chance to visit the shelter, and I talked to some of your volunteers. I took a tour of what was set up, including what appeared to be a radio room. Was the first part of the when you walk into the entrance. What's happening? There was several people in there in communication with what was going on with others. I think other volunteers. Explain what's going on in that room, and why is that set up? What is the purpose of that?
We have ham radio operators as volunteers, and we use them to communicate with our job headquarters in Albany and to communicate with others. Sometimes during a disaster, cell phone reception can be spotty. It was a little spotty in Fort Plain anyway, particularly when you got to the lower part of the town. Sometimes cell phones get overloaded, so it's just an easy and reliable way for us to communicate among our staff and volunteers about what needs to be done.
And it's true. Some cell phone service does seem to fail at the most inconvenient time when you need it, and that's a good I guess function that you have that set up as a backup. And then the next area that I toured, of course, your volunteers were working in the cafeteria. I talked to several families. You were able to provide hot meals to the families in need in the shelter. Let's talk about the food, the donations, the supplies. Where does all that come from, and how can people help?
The food that we receive is a combination of donated items that we get and items that we purchase ourselves. And sometimes we get things shipped in from our national headquarters. And the cooks were almost all volunteers. It was great having a kitchen right at the shelter. In terms of how people can help, we're always looking for volunteers, not for this disaster, but for future disasters. And people can, go to redcross.org and just click on volunteer, and it'll take you through the process. And there's dozens of different opportunities for volunteering. We're looking for blood donors, and obviously we're looking for financial support. This was a costly relief operation, not only here, but also in central New York, and we need to raise the dollars to cover it. The first thing we do is respond, and then and no matter what it costs, we're going to respond, but now we need to raise the dollars to pay for that response.
Right, and certainly the shelter seems to be the most, I think it is the most critical part, because people are displaced out of their homes. From what I understand from being on the scene, talking to the families, that this happened very quickly. Some of them were not able to bring clothes or any supplies whatsoever. What is that like, dealing with getting families in and trying to get them accommodated at a moment's notice?
It's it's something our volunteers are very good at. Unfortunately, they have to do it too often. You know, people that have had to leave their house on a moment's notice without, you know, any of their personal possessions, you know, just sometimes just with the clothes on their back. So, I mean, I think our volunteers are very good in terms of being compassionate and providing the hugs that people need
Sure,
sometimes.
yeah.
But it's really difficult, particularly, you know, you saw, as I did, children in the shelter, and so it's hard on folks. You know, we see it every day with fires, but people had to leave in a matter of moments.
And particularly with children, you're right. I had a chance to talk with a little girl, 9-year-old. She was coloring in the cafeteria, and she really didn't know exactly what was going on, but she knew that she had a place to stay,
Right.
a place to sleep. She was with her family, and she had a place to eat. And certainly it's the efforts of the community as a whole, but Red Cross is a part of that to help these families get their lives back together and move forward from this. So I thank you for your support and your responding so quickly to the people in Fort Plain and beyond as well, as this disaster wasn't just limited to that area, but beyond as well.
Yeah. And our volunteers loved when you came to visit them. They always love when they can show off the good work they're doing to elected officials, and I think it's always a good morale boost when folks, you know, you were there a few times, others were there. And so we're grateful for that.
Yeah, and for that matter, Montgomery County Emergency Management, all the local officials, the community came together. They really responded. They worked together. I saw people as I walked the streets, just citizens helping one another, neighbors helping neighbors, people with shovels, people doing their own cleanup. If they were all set or at a good spot, they would go help their neighbor. Just the community come together and really respond to this. And,
it was, and it made it a much more effective response. And we saw the same thing, lots of not-for-profits all working together, not worrying about territory and things like that. Just everybody came together and helped. We had volunteers from other not-for-profits that were helping us. The churches were obviously all involved. We had somebody sitting at the Montgomery County Office of Emergency Management the entire time. So, you know, it was really coordinated, and, you know, everybody in that community that could help was helping, and that's what makes it work.
And let me ask you now, when we had a briefing, Montgomery County Emergency Management had their daily briefing that I sat in on. We also were able to, I noticed that there were, we talked about a weather pattern, a current weather map on the screen, projected on the wall that they were monitoring. Sort of on a regular basis. How was the information flowing from there to Red Cross and to others? Was it flowing? Were you in constant communication?
Yeah, and since we had somebody right at the county sitting at the at emergency management office, we were able to get information. Plus, you know, on our own, our folks are monitoring the weather, and all, you know, from Albany, and our national headquarters people are
Okay.
monitoring the weather. So we, you know, so we were in back and forth communication all the time. The internet just gives you so many different options to get sort of more real-time information as to what's going on.
Yeah, certainly it's more available now than it has been in the past. Weather patterns seem to have changed in recent times as well. We're seeing this type of event more and more frequent. What seems to be more frequent than it has been in the past. What are your thoughts on that? Are you getting more? Are you finding yourself, is Red Cross responding to more flooding events?
We're responding to more extreme weather events, and
Okay.
it can be flooding, it can be tornadoes, it can be, you know, we've had a little bit of everything here. We had earthquakes here, we've had so many fires, ice storms. So, you know, and the data that we've seen nationally has shown that there are significantly more people impacted by disasters in the last 10 years than 10 years before that.
So it seems like this type of event is happening more frequently, and certainly we hope we've seen the last of it. But it could happen again. And how prepared is Red Cross to respond to events like this?
We spend all of our time when we're not responding preparing. We are, you know, training volunteers, drilling, things like that. We know we have to be prepared for bigger and more frequent disasters. So we're working at that, and at the same time, we know the public does. So we offer a lot of opportunities for the public to get prepared and to do the things you need to do to be prepared for a disaster. Things like first aid training, things about, you know, simple things like learning what to pack in a go bag, to have a bag ready to go for if you have to leave your house. Things if you're sheltering in place, like flashlights and batteries and a radio that people don't think of. So it's a combination of these, preparing the Red Cross and preparing the public, and we work at it every day.
And I've noticed, and I do follow you on Twitter, and I think you do have a Facebook as well.
Yep.
So we're on both of those, and we follow the updates. And one of the things that I noticed that you have is some apps, and apps seems to be a big thing now. Technology is changing. Some of them are, they do exactly what you just described. They tell you how to prepare, how to respond, when and where shelters are open. Tell us, maybe you could tell us a little bit about these things, and people at home might be able to download them and keep them on their phone, keep them handy.
There's so many different ways to teach people to be prepared, to get people information than there were a few years ago. As you said, we have a number of apps that are available on iPads, on iPhones. They're available for Android phones, and we have a shelter finder, we have an earthquake one, we have a tornado one, we have a wildfire one, first aid and hurricane. And I know our national organization is developing more of them, and you can download those, and you have all sorts of information ahead of time, what to do ahead of time, how to be prepared, kind of neat quizzes that you can take, which can make it fun for the whole family, what to do after a disaster. And then there are even, like the tornado one, I know will broadcast an alert. I know when we had a tornado warning here a couple of weeks ago, a couple of folks told me that their phone was off, and the app actually turned their phone on and gave them, and sounded a siren, and it sounds like somebody saying tornado warning.
And it kind of gives you the information ahead of time, and just kind of be aware of what's going on.
Yeah, and it's free.
Well, with the technology, it's certainly that's certainly useful, and it doesn't take much to download it and have it handy.
Right.
And a lot of them are simple things that
Sure.
you may not think of every day until
Right.
an emergency happens. Like having batteries. I needed a flashlight just the other day, and the batteries were dead. So
Everybody has that same problem.
Yeah,
Everybody has flashlights. So what I do is take some and I stow them in a separate place, away from sort of the flashlights that the kids are playing with and all that. And,
right.
And we also have things you can do on the internet, like you can go to redcross.org, and there's all sorts of preparedness tips. You can download these checklists, how to prepare a bag, like a go kit, what to be prepared for, what to do after. We actually even offer a babysitting course online to teach kids how to be babysitters. So there's just a million different ways to access the information now, and we're just trying to make it easier all the time.
That's wonderful. And these apps are all available on your website, as you said. So.
Yeah, and you can go to redcross.org, or
Okay.
you can go to the normal store that you would buy apps on, from your iPad, or the store for Android phones, and they're all free.
And if someone wanted to contact your office directly, what is that number?
458-8111. We're in Albany at 33 Everett Road.
And there's plenty of opportunities to volunteer,
Absolutely.
to help out, to make donations, and all those donations go to benefit, help people that are affected by disasters such as the one we just talked about.
That's right.
So if you have not had a chance to do so, I encourage you to do that. One of the things we also talked about, and I had a chance to be involved with, kind of tag along, was what's called the ERV, the Emergency Response Vehicle. Now this is something that, as I was in Fort Plain and the emergency we had in Schenectady County, people were looking for the Red Cross vehicle to come through, because with that they knew they were going to get fresh, clean water, bottles of water, food, things that were not available in their own homes because of no power, or they just didn't have access to it. Tell us about the ERV. How does it operate? What's the primary purpose of it?
We have a number of them in the area that we use when there are disasters that are more than just like a single home, and it's a way for us we can fill it with food, we can fill it with water, we can have some volunteers in it, or some staff that can provide mental health support, or they can hand out information. Sometimes we have caseworkers that will tell people where to go to get the help that the Red Cross can't provide, and so we'll drive around neighborhoods. So we'll try to announce it ahead of time when we can. Sometimes you can't because of the situation, and just hand out that food, hand out that water. Sometimes people want a hug. We can give them other information, whatever sort of applicable for that situation.
The other thing that I noticed that while I was on board the ERV, kind of going around, is that once in a while they will stop if they see a particular home that's damaged, or a vehicle or something, and fill out some paperwork and kind of do an assessment. When did they do that, and what's that information used for? Where does it go?
Normally at the beginning of a disaster, we try to, when it's safe to get back in the area, we do a damage assessment, which essentially will be a go house to house to see what you can see in terms of damage. And we classify homes as either destroyed or in major damage or minor damage. And what that helps us do is it helps us assess the amount of resources that we're going to have to put into a relief operation. And also we share the data with the state and with the federal government, and it helps them do their planning. And in this case, we saw over 200 homes that were impacted in Fort Plain.
So that's quite a bit of, and the vehicle was several times a day was out on the road,
yes,
accessing,
getting
supplies to these individuals.
Yeah, we've been going around the streets of Fort Plain for for days, and continuing to have the presence, and there's a caseworker there in the vehicle too that can just, if somebody has questions, what do I do? Who do I talk to? Is there an organization that provides X? Since the Red Cross, these folks know the answers to all of that.
Well, we're going to take a short break. I want to thank you again for joining us. Why don't you give out that website before we do that one more time?
www.redcross.org. You can get preparedness information, donate, all sorts of things.
We're going to check out that website while we take a short break. When we come back, more about the American Red Cross and what they're doing to help flood recovery efforts in Fort Plain. If you are interested in being a future guest on our show to talk about things going on in your community, please contact me at 518-355-1022 or by email at asantabarbara001@nycap.rr.com. Welcome back to the show. We've been talking with Gary Striar from American Red Cross, and he's been telling us about all the efforts that the American Red Cross, all of their efforts to help the people that were impacted by the recent floods in Fort Plain of Montgomery County and beyond, and some of the work that they do in the area and how quickly they're able to respond and really help these families get back on track and move forward from disasters like this. Gary, I want to thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you.
We talked about several different things. We talked about the website, we talked about some great apps. I hope people are going to get on your Twitter and start following you for updates. I find it very handy, very useful. You had some interesting statistics regarding this last event, this last disaster. Why don't we share that with the audience just so we can get an idea of the magnitude and how Red Cross responded?
Okay. As I said, there were a little over 200 homes impacted in Fort Plain, but region-wide, which mostly includes Oneida and Herkimer County, we had over 2,000 homes that were impacted. And about 1,700 of them are homes that we don't believe are livable at this moment. So there's a huge amount of people throughout the area. Herkimer County actually had the most number of homes, but throughout the entire area, over 2,000 homes. In terms of the service we provide, we've provided over 20,000 meals and snacks throughout the entire relief operation, Central New York and the Fort Plain area. About half of that has been in Fort Plain. We've distributed about 17,000 bulk items. Those are the shovels and the tarps and the brooms and the rakes and all of those sorts of things. We've also distributed about 1,000 what we call comfort kits. There are things that have like personal hygiene products in it for people who've left their homes without anything. And we've provided almost 1,000 mental health services. That means 1,000 different mental health contacts with people in the impacted area where mental health workers sat down with them and talked and tried to provide support to them.
Now that's an area where people typically don't think about when you think about disasters like this, but that is a need in the community when something like this happens. Let's talk a little bit about that.
It's mental. Obviously, we can't even imagine what it's like to have people have to leave their home at a moment's notice and not know whether they're even going to be able to get back in their home. Particularly people with families. A lot of these folks were not wealthy people to start out with financially, so they're worried about the financial implications and how are they going to afford all of this, and some of the units didn't have insurance. So we have trained mental health folks, a lot of times like psychologists and folks like that, who can go out in the community and sit down on a one-on-one basis and talk to people. And a lot of times people feel much better if they just have someone to talk to, if they can cry, get a hug, those sorts of things. And most importantly, we'll then refer them to, if you continue to have issues, here's some things you can read. and here's some places you can call if you need, more long-term assistance.
Right. And I found that that's exactly right on what you said, because when I did visit the shelter, the families just wanted to know you were there, wanted to talk. The little girl keeps coming to mind. I have a 9-year-old myself, and she was 9 years old, and just wanted to know that things were going to be okay. And that makes a big difference in people's lives when things like this happen.
And for some of these people, this was not the first time they were flooded. So I think that makes it even harder when it's, yet again, it was 7 years ago to the day that we had the flooding throughout Montgomery County. And for some of these folks, I just think they're tired, and, as all of us would be, that, they have had to go through this too many times.
As you said, you talked about the meals. That's quite a few meals distributed at the shelter, but they were hot meals. And they were provided for families that needed the shelter. Over time, the shelter was able to close. How does that process? How does that process take place?
The Montgomery County DSS sort of leads that effort, and they sat with us and with our caseworkers and met with each family one-on-one and tried to figure out, do you have a place to live? If you don't, let's work with you to get you a place to live. And between vacant housing in the area, a lot of times landlords will call in and say, we've got units that are available, or sometimes in public housing we'll have vacant units. So on a one-on-one basis, met with every family to make sure until all of the families were accounted for. And within the process of about 5 or 6 days, every family had somewhere to go and live. Some people went to friends or family or things like that. So when that occurred, at that point we closed the shelter.
And were there people, did you find that when the shelter opened, people that were didn't know about the shelter and showed up later on, and those people were accommodated as well?
Yeah.
And not necessarily, and how does the information get out about the shelter? That's the other part that I guess people might want to know about this. A disaster occurs, you're in your home, you have no power, you're looking for shelter. How would they be able to find or coordinate where to go and how to get there?
We put it out everywhere in the media, and TV, radio, local officials like yourselves have helped us get out the information. If you have a way to use the Shelter Finder app, right. You can always call your emergency management office and find out. So there's, we just try to get it out through all sorts of different sources. And Twitter has really helped us because, we send it out and then everybody in the media starts retweeting it. And,
right.
and local officials like you retweet it, and before you know it, it's out everywhere.
Yeah, that certainly was very, very helpful. We talked about the volunteers. There was plenty of volunteers in the shelter on location, operating the ERV. Where do these volunteers come from? They're not all local. Some of them are from beyond the area. How are they organized, and how do you get them to where they need to be?
Most of the volunteers were from somewhere within our 17 county service area. We have about 3,000 volunteers in total. So there were some volunteers that the national organization sent in from out of state to augment the relief operation when we had some shortages, and that's typical. What we normally do in a disaster is we staff it with our own local resources, and then as it gets bigger, we can draw on resources from elsewhere in the state, volunteers from elsewhere in the state, and staff, and then we can work with the national organization to go beyond the state to pull resources in. So we only had a few from out of state. We try to keep the numbers down from out of state because it's costly, and then it takes longer for people to get here.
Sure.
What works really well is if we have a strong local volunteer force, because they can get there right away. They understand the local. They know the community. They know the people. It works a lot better. So for us, having a strong volunteer base is important.
And certainly there's opportunities for people to volunteer. I know you have a training program. How do people get involved? What is involved in the training program? How long does it take?
We have, if you want to volunteer, you can go to redcross.org, and there's just a big button that says volunteer.
Okay.
And you can click on that, and then it takes you through the process of signing up to be a volunteer. There are a huge number of different ways to volunteer. Some people want to volunteer for the daily disaster responses we do. We do about 350 fires a year. Some people want to work at blood drives. Some people want to do data entry or work at the front desk or answer phones or teach preparedness training. So dozens of different ways someone can volunteer. So what the website will do is take you through the process of figuring out what you're interested in, and then based on that, the disaster training is the most extensive. But disaster training is lengthy, particularly for people who want to respond in big national disasters that are obviously extensive and really require a lot of work. But there's lots of opportunities.
So it sounds like there's not just one thing. There's actually a wide range of things that people can get involved with. And of course, there's always the people can donate towards helping people, families that are affected. Again, through the website, or they can contact your office. Why don't we give out that number again?
Yeah, we're at 458-8111, and there are lots of organizations raising money. We hope people will donate to the Red Cross at redcross.org, but there are going to be a lot of organizations that are going to have to continue to help people in Fort Plain for a long time, and the public is going to need to keep that in mind and to remember, because this will be off the headlines in a couple of weeks.
Right.
But the response is going to continue. And
as we talked about, these events, they seem to be more frequent than they have in the past, and I think we talked about Red Cross has kind of made some adjustments to be able to respond to this, and we certainly appreciate you being on the ground so quickly and responding to these things. As far as the events coming up in the rest of the year, are there blood drives? Are there things going on in the area that we could direct people to if they wanted to participate that way?
There are blood drives almost every day. You can when you go to redcross.org, you can click on Donate Blood, and then you can enter your zip code, and it'll tell you where blood drives are. Summer is always an important time to donate blood, because we collect a large part of our blood from schools, from high schools and colleges, and when those are out of session in the summer, the inventory gets a little bit tighter.
Okay.
So it's a great time to donate blood, and there's blood drives in almost every community every week. So that's a great way. And again, continue to volunteer, financial donations, get yourself prepared. Use an app, go online. Take a babysitting class or a first aid class. There's lots of different ways to engage.
Well, certainly if people watching the show have not visited the website, I encourage them to do that. It sounds like very comprehensive, a lot of good things on there, things to download. If you have not gotten on the Twitter, go ahead and do that as well. If you have the Twitter app, it's a great way to keep updated. I was able to see update and retweet and pass the information along to people in my district on what was going on, and getting the information to people. That's the uncertainty and knowing what's happening, where the shelters are, when is it open, how do I get there. All that information is available, and of course they can always call the office.
Sure.
And why don't we give out that number one more time?
458-8111. You can call anytime. It's manned 24 hours a day, the phone.
Okay, and the office is in Albany?
Yes, Everett Road in Albany, which is right off exit 5 of I-90.
I want to thank you again for being on the show, and I want to thank you for what the Red Cross did in this particular situation, and all emergency situations, what you do to help people and families recover from disasters. It's certainly a tough time, but Red Cross is there on the scene to make it easier and to help people get basic necessities like food and water, and provide them with comfort and help our families move on from disasters like this.
We appreciate your support. You've been really supportive of us, and we're very grateful.
And if you haven't had a chance to donate to the Red Cross, I encourage you to do so. It does go towards a great cause, and it goes to helping families. And I had a chance to really see firsthand, to travel on the emergency response vehicle and to see the families that were affected and how much they rely on just a friendly truck coming through with the Red Cross symbol, knowing that there's food and water available during a power outage. One of the biggest things was that a lot of the homes had no power. So getting a bottle of water or getting a little bit of food makes all the difference in the world. Yeah. So I want to thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you.
We'll have you back again for an update maybe later on this year. If you have not done so, please contact the Red Cross, consider volunteering, consider becoming trained, or consider making a donation. Thank you. Join us again on the show next time, but we'll talk about more things going on in your community.